Hello, this is Colin, and
This is Everett. We are Uranium's strongest soldiers.
Yay.
Today we want to talk to everyone about nuclear energy and nuclear power plants and how they're a political tool with no real meaning to the average person. It's just a term
And we're trying to convince you why we should implement nuclear power reactors more. And go ahead and dispel some of the scares, the fears of just like Chernobyl, Tokaimura, the general
Fukushima.
Yeah, just the power plant accidents that have some people scared, and we're going to tell you that a lot of these can be remedied, and it's not as scary as it seems, basically. So we'll just go into what nuclear power is and the history of it. So, nuclear energy, that is generated by nuclear fission, which is what happens when a alpha particle, gamma particle, any particle just bombards a nucleus for an atom. And usually that atom that we use is U-235, uranium-235, which is an isotope of uranium that we have to get after enriching uranium-238, which is the natural form of it. And so basically, like, the development of this comes back to 1895 when ionizing radiation was discovered. And this was done by Wilhelm Röntgen. And basically he discovered that it pulls electrons from molecules, or rather he just discovered that it exists. They did not know of the electron pulling from the atom until like much later. But okay, so he figured this out by running an electric current through an evacuated glass tube and producing continuous X-rays. And basically, Ernest Rutherford, he used the first to specifically fire particles into the atom and create a nuclear reaction. And basically 1919, Ernest Rutherford observed the first one, and then to like 1945 we know of the atomic bomb. And it wasn't until it was after the war where they decided that they wanted to harness the nuclear fission.
And I'd also like to point out that the atomic bombs that the USA dropped in 1945 were almost humanity's first public viewing of nuclear power and what it could do, which is a very understandable reaction as to why there could be such a negative perception of nuclear power right now.
It's probably the scariest thing that we can think of, really, realistically. But the thing is, it doesn't work the same. A nuclear power facility doesn't work the same as an atomic bomb. And
if I understand it correctly, a nuclear bomb is essentially the uncontrolled fission of splitting an atom, while when we're harnessing nuclear energy, it's in a very controlled environment.
Yeah, and it's basically like an unlimited chain reaction.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of uranium in there specifically for that reaction, which generates a bunch of heat and a bunch of radiation. But in 1953, Eisenhower did the Atoms for Peace. I believe it was an act, but it was the beginning of the public advocacy for nuclear fission in America. But basically the first nuclear power facility was in the Soviet Union around 1953. So the first commercial power plant for nuclear power in America was in 1957. It was a power plant called Shippingport.
Yep.
And the government went all in on this.
Yeah, at this time, which is, we can contrast it to today, we'll talk about that later, but in 1957 with Shippingport, they had almost the full government support backing them in order to research and fund everything they were doing. We can get more into contrasting that later, but continuing on with the history, in general throughout time, one of the main issues that has always come with, across all countries, that has come with nuclear energy has been the expenses that come with it. Nuclear energy, nuclear reactors, they're very expensive to build. They take time to build. Uranium fuel is expensive. Natural gases are cheaper. So why? Well, why should we kind of target this area? What makes it so appealing, Colin?
So yeah, what makes this so appealing is it's just fossil fuels. That's what you were saying, right?
Yeah. Yes, fossil fuels.
Yeah,
sorry,
fossil.
Misspeak by me.
No, it's alright. But no, I was just clarifying where I was because my brain doesn't work. It's because of the accident. You know.
You're all good.
You know the accident.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So fossil fuels, they're more economical for these companies that are getting commissioned to build, or rather not even commissioned. They're just building them. So they see it, and they see that a nuclear facility is just a huge expense to them. So they think it's more economical to build a fossil fuel power plant, you know, like everybody else. But the fuel is not as costly, and the expenditure of coal compared to the expenditure of nuclear fuel rods is like tons and tons, billions. And it's like in the long run, it generates a lot more waste to have all this coal going out.
For sure.
And so the reason that it's less economical to build a nuclear power plant in the short term is because of the regulation, just of like creating these facilities. It has to withstand a ton of pressure. It has to. You said it had to.
To even be specific, the current United States regulations for nuclear power plant require that it can not blow up during an earthquake, and it could not survive but withstand the impact of a commercial airliner flying into it at full speed.
And that's tons and tons of pressure.
Yes, that's in the millions to billions of newtons of force per square foot, per square inch. However, so the way around that is the reactor in these nuclear power plants is buried way within the middle of all of it. And there are layers of reinforced steel and concrete walls spanning out hierarchically across it. So it's ultimately very protected. It would take a lot to get through to that, through crashing into it and breaking all those walls.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible, basically.
Yeah, so, and that's like tons of digging, that's tons of infrastructure underground.
Yep.
And really, the reason for like a lack of change in the regulation is because it's really not a popular talking point among politicians that we see. It's just kind of floating there. They if they're asked on it, they'll probably have an opinion on it, but they don't really talk about it.
I think it's because of the association of the term nuclear energy with climate change. Yeah. I think while climate change is very important, I'm not denying that at all. I think that narrative has been pushed onto society very harshly of we need nuclear energy only because of climate change. Well, it's not only because of climate change, and we're here to try and tell you why it's not just climate change that we could enact nuclear energy and see a benefit from it.
Yeah, and it has like very low emissions comparatively, but when people say nuclear energy, they think of like The Simpsons, where there's like a atomic sludge barrel going into the water and creating like three-eyed fish or something. Yeah. But that's really not what it is. We have designated nuclear waste depositories. Yeah. Even though that has been a question, we have been searching for places to put it. It is not a bunch of sludge running into a field. And
right now atomic waste is currently stored essentially in like an empty swimming pool, more or less, and it's surrounded by water. So there's really no way to accidentally get close to it.
And the waste itself, some of it can be recycled.
Yeah, that's something the U.S. does a very poor job of. Looking at almost every other country internationally,
Yeah.
they all reuse their nuclear waste. Even the stat that 90% of nuclear waste after 5 years, after 5 years, 90% of the energy in the uranium rods is still contained. And so we've kind of been throwing them out after 5 to 8 years. France reuses them, and because of that, there's this fun fact, I like this, 10% of all light bulbs in France are made from nuclear recycling.
That's like 10% of light bulbs.
That's
a
lot.
Light bulbs everywhere. But okay, so we'll go into talking about like how France's works. So around 70% of power in France is generated by nuclear power plants. And it was a goal basically a little bit ago, 2012, I believe. President Holland planned to reduce energy produced by nuclear power plants to 50%, and this was like a goal to eliminate emissions, basically, green growth, push towards renewable energy. But 2014, green growth bills passed, 63.2 gigawatt electric cap was put on nuclear power plants, and that's 1,500 gigawatt electric being thrown into the wind. And a lot of people did not like this. They attempted to change it in 2015, but it was not accepted. The cap was still there. So 2017 rolls around, they decide to remove the cap for the election, and they say we'll put it on hold for now. But the original goal was by 2025 we'll have 50% of electricity generated by nuclear reactors instead of like 70%. But 2023 comes, they abandon the project entirely. It was a really ambitious move to eliminate emissions, like just use renewables, and they seem attractive. They seem like they're gonna fix everything, but that's not sustainable and it's not economical.
It's not, and government, the reason part of it is so not economical, so unaffordable, or actually affordable, I should say, is government regulations. And so we've been talking about that, and how with nuclear energy, the government's regulated it. It has to be very safe, understandably, and that makes it very expensive. Now we look on the flip side of this. When you get to, like, we'll just call it fossil fuels, oil, gas, the government subsidizes close to $1 trillion the U.S. government specifically, subsidizes close to $1 trillion per year in only oil. But we'll call it we'll overall it and call it fossil fuels. The current government funding planned for 2025, however, let me use the 2023 number, is $1.7 billion for all nuclear research. That includes research, infrastructure, building it, all of the above, just in general.
That's more than a Snickers bar, if you ask me.
Yeah, so we're sitting there, that's almost 1%. That is 1% of not even what we're spending on oil, but what we're subsidizing on oil. In 2023, big oil company recorded $4 trillion in profits, not just in what they made, but $4 billion in profits, what they got to keep and take home. This is an overinflated sector with way too much government help to basically push it down the average person's throat. With all these subsidies, if you cut these subsidies, the government it would seem like a tax. It would raise the price of oil by about $70 per pound, I believe. At that level, with no government subsidies, nuclear energy is more efficient and cheaper and more affordable to produce than oil. However, we just have oil and gas integrated into our government so harshly that it almost seems impossible to try and get off of this infrastructure that we already made.
It's like a group of when you pull it out, it's so big. It's like a mistletoe or something, some parasitic plant. But of course, we need it right now. We can't go full nuclear energy, and
Yes.
we'll use this to talk about some of the fears associated with nuclear energy.